Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Guy Shiraki, and I serve as the CEO of the Chester County Chamber of Business and Industry. Today is another in our series of conversations with elected officials. We have been especially focusing this year on meeting some elected officials who are new to their office, either having just been elected or serving in a new role, in a leadership role in the legislature. Today, we have with us as our guest the new Treasurer of Pennsylvania, Stacy Garrity. To begin our program, I'm going to turn it over to Perry Bentley. Today, for this event, Bentley Systems is our sponsor, and Perry's going to tell you a little bit about Bentley Systems and the work they do. Perry, the floor is yours, and thanks for being our sponsor.
Of course, thank you, Guy, and thanks everyone for joining. I just want to say Bentley Systems is very proud to sponsor the Chamber's work to promote the voice of the business community in the southeast of Pennsylvania, but also our home here in Chester County. Bentley Systems, we were the largest software company in the world for the design and the construction and the operation of infrastructure. We have 4,000 colleagues and operate in 172 countries, but we're based here in Chester County, so we care a great deal. So you might hear my baby crying in the background. Working from home's fun. Can't wait for offices to open again. Speaking of being based in Chester County, our headquarters is in Exton here in Pennsylvania, and so we have an interest in the strength and the vitality of the economy of Pennsylvania. On behalf of Bentley and the Chamber, we welcome Treasurer Garrity for joining us today. We're very excited to hear from you, and we want to thank you for joining us here virtually, and we look forward to meeting you in person eventually. Back over to Guy.
Thank you, Perry, and thank you. Bentley Systems has been a supporter of the Chamber since their very inception. Greg Bentley is one of our honorees as our Executives of the Year. And Perry, in addition to supporting this event, is a member of our Executive Board. So we very much appreciate not only their financial support, but the hours of time and expertise that he shares with the Chamber. So thank you. As we said, our guest today is the new State Treasurer of Pennsylvania, Stacy Garrity, who was elected in November. We previously shared her biography with all of you. I would encourage you to reread it. And if you haven't read it, shame on you. Read it afterwards, but not during the program. I won't go through her very important and interesting background line by line, but I do want to share a few highlights. Aside from being the new treasurer, she does have a background in accounting and finance as a vice president of a large corporation. She is from Bradford County up in northeastern Pennsylvania. One of my first work assignments many generations ago for John Hines was to greet him at the airport in Towanda. I recall being in Bradford County eons ago. So in addition to her work in the private sector and her work in the community, she is a decorated retired colonel in the Army and served in Iraq. And I encourage you again to review that part of her biography. So she has been in public service for a long time, and she's just wearing a new hat, if you will. So she has a very impressive background in business, very impressive background in public service, and we're very fortunate to have her today. And we do want to welcome you virtually to Chester County, and we look forward to having you in person. So friends, ladies and gentlemen, the new treasurer of the state of Pennsylvania, the Honorable Stacy Garrity. Thank you for being with us, Treasurer.
Guy, thank you so much for having me. You can all hear me okay? Okay. And thank you, Perry, for sponsoring the event. It's really fantastic to be with the Chester Chamber, albeit virtually. And I am going to just start out, if I could, with a little bit about my background. I won't go into line by line detail, but I was born and raised in Bradford County, and I was going to say it's not Bradford, PA, but Guy, shockingly, visited Towanda, Pennsylvania, which is the county seat of Bradford County and where I worked in the private sector for 34 years. So I like to joke that there are more cows than people in Bradford County. So obviously it's a very rural part of the Commonwealth. So I was the first generation on my father's side to attend college. So I went to Bloomsburg University, and just the second on my mom's side. I did spend 34 years at the same company, Global Tungsten and Powders, which is the largest tungsten smelter in the Western world, which is pretty interesting, considering it's from such a small area. And it was started by two people that went to Towanda High School together back in 1916. So over 104 years of manufacturing history. We employed, I still say we because I was there for 34 years, and the community, and the employees are still very near and dear to my heart, but employ just under 500. Also have 2 locations, one in the Czech Republic that also does tungsten production, and one in Jyväskylä, Finland. And I was on the M&A team for that. So I did work my way up to become the vice president, one of 2 female vice presidents in the company. And for 9 years, until I took the most recent assignment of vice president of government affairs and industry liaison. The 2 assignments prior to that were director of sales and marketing, responsible for $650 million worth of revenue. And then later I was a vice president for 2 out of 3 of our business units. For 9 years, I spent about 50% of my time traveling globally. So I've been to countries like China, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, South Korea, India, Israel, Russia, Australia, Austria, Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Sweden, Switzerland, Spain, the UK, Finland, Belgium. I'm sure I'm missing some countries, but I think you get the picture. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is so you didn't think that I spent my whole life never venturing out of Bradford County. So people used to ask me, what's your favorite place to visit? And yeah, Australia was actually pretty great. But my response was always, my favorite place to travel is home. Okay, so my last assignment, I was vice president of government affairs and industry liaison, and that was really interesting. So I was able to secure $4.2 million in grant money from IBAS, that's Industrial Base Assessment and Sustainment, for our company for a rotary forge and some ancillary equipment. And that was right around November of last year. And so a couple months after that, I decided, and that's a whole nother story, to run for state treasurer. And I told my CEO, we're Austrian ownership, and I said, you know, now that I got this money, I need a little bit of flexibility because I'm going to run for state treasurer, but don't worry, I'm pretty sure I can't win. So they said okay, and they were very accommodating, and so I was able to travel to almost every single county. And as Guy mentioned, I also spent 30 years in the United States Army Reserve, and I had 3 combat deployments. They were all to Iraq. And my last assignment, or my last deployment, was in 2008, 2009. I was acting battalion commander at Camp Bucca, which is in southern Iraq, and I had 7,000 detainees, so an internment facility. So you could imagine just a big prison warden, but it was actually a lot more than that, and 1,200 soldiers. And we were the first internment facility to have 0 abuse allegations and 0 escape attempts. So that was pretty exciting. So I retired in June of 2016 because they kick you out after you hit 30 years. You hit that thing called your mandatory retirement date. So I went from being gone every single weekend, being on calls every single night, to actually being home 2 consecutive weekends. And the second weekend I was home, my husband looked at me and he said, Stacy, don't you have somewhere you need to be? And I said, no, I'm sorry about your golf game. But that worked out okay because he went and bought a new set of golf clubs, and we took care of his golf handicap. So I'm just kidding. So my swearing-in ceremony was January 19th. I was so humbled and honored to be elected as the Pennsylvania State Treasurer because, as you know, a Republican had not unseated a Democrat incumbent in a statewide race since 1994, and particularly somebody from Bradford County that had never run for anything. So I will mention a couple of folks that we brought onto the team. So we brought on Eric Arneson. He joined Treasury as the Deputy Treasurer of Communications, and Eric was previously the Executive Director for Office of Open Records, and prior to that spent about 15 years or so as the state Republican Leadership Communications Director. We also brought on Charles Zogby, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that name, but he joined the Treasury as Deputy Treasurer of Fiscal Operations and Policy. And previous to that, Charles served as Budget Director for Governor Corbett, and most recently oversaw the economic recovery of the Erie City Schools. Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about Treasury, but what I am going to mention is a couple of fun facts about Chester. Okay. So I'm not sure if you know, but Treasury just pushed out $553 million in rental and utility assistance to Chester County. No, not to Chester County, for the whole Commonwealth. Chester County received $18.9 million. And that just hit the county March 5th, so just this past Friday. We also sent out to all 67 counties in the Commonwealth grant money for hospitality. So it's called CHIRP funds, but that was 145 million. Of that amount, Chester County got $5.9 million. And that should have hit the county February 28th, so the very last day in February. So that's $5.9 million, and that's grant money anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000 to help small businesses. And that means less than 300 employees in the hospitality industry. Also in Chester County, you have unclaimed property of $99.4 million. So that's a lot of unclaimed property. And the total number of properties are 594,899. Okay, so after this, I think that all of you should get on the Treasury website, patreasury.gov/unclaimed property, and type your name in and see if you have any unclaimed property. Because 1 out of 10 Pennsylvanians do have unclaimed property, and the average size is just over $2,000. So some other things we're working on is transparency. We have a transparency portal right on our website if you've looked at that, and Treasury puts out all payments on that, but that's just our agency. We would like the other agencies to participate. That could require some legislative changes, but we'd like to move eventually towards something called open checkbook. We've been inundated with the PUA fraud. So although unemployment compensation is a labor and industry initiative, we cut the checks. So of course now our call centers are inundated. Instead of people saying, where's my money? They want to know, hey, how I got a 1099 for income that I never received. So we estimate there's probably 150,000 Pennsylvanians that have had their identity scammed. And they're getting 1099s from, not only from Pennsylvania, but also from New Jersey, from Ohio, so New York, so other states, okay? And so we have redirected 24 of our folks to help Pennsylvanians make sure that they don't get victimized a second time. So we have a link to the IRS, we have a link to labor and industry, and we have directions about how you can request a corrected 1099. And I'm sure every single one of you out there knows somebody that got a 1099 for money that they didn't receive. Let me see, we're also doing some rural outreach. So we have these savings programs, the 529, so that's for college savings and career, because I think everybody knows that skilled labor is an issue all across the Commonwealth, right? So this money can be used for college and career savings. We have the ABLE program, that's for folks with disabilities. So we're trying to, instead of, this pandemic made you realize, okay, you can work from home and be, in most cases, and be very, very productive. And so we want to have a better representation geographically instead of having everybody need to be out of Harrisburg. Because when you think about it, and Guy will appreciate this, being at the Towanda Airport, that somebody from Dauphin County isn't going to relate possibly so well as somebody from Bradford County or say Susquehanna County and those rural areas. So let's see, the other thing that we really want to look at, and this is going to be more of a marathon than a sprint, is retirement savings, because there are a couple million Pennsylvanians all throughout the Commonwealth. They do not have enough money to retire, so they have no savings. So we would like to look at something called Keystone Saves, and this is a program where Treasury would help small businesses set up basically payroll deductions. That's all they would have to do, set up a payroll deduction, and then Treasury would manage the program. So that would be small businesses, probably, we didn't set the number of employees yet, but probably over 5 employees that do not have any sort of retirement plan. And this would be good for the small businesses to be a more attractive employer and to be able to keep and retain talent. It would be a big help to the Commonwealth, because people that retire that can't afford to retire, they'll end up being a drain on the Commonwealth, and it's good for seniors. So with that, you've probably heard me talk enough. Should we open it up for questions, Guy?
Sure. Thank you very much for giving that overview, because a lot of folks are not, even if they're following government closely and follow legislation, are not necessarily, they're still learning about what the row offices do. And right. I appreciate the overview and the perspective. So we have some questions in the chat. I'm going to do that. But first, I want to, former Senator Earl Baker is on. And I'm going to invite Senator Baker, if you unmute your phone. Often Senator Baker gets the privilege of asking our first question. His knowledge of government is limitless, and we thought that we'd give him that opportunity. Senator Earl, do you have a question for the treasurer?
Yes, I do, Guy. Let me start by saying that I congratulate you on your election and on the experience that you bring to the office. I think it's a unique background and one that will be well suited to innovating and administering the important office you hold. I would like to ask if you have plans to coordinate with the Auditor General. Since both of you have such important positions, are there points where you converge with the Auditor General, and do you have that kind of a possible relationship to work together?
Thank you for that question, Senator Baker. I appreciate it. Yes, I know Tim DeFore very well, mainly, from the campaign trail, and had the pleasure to be able to introduce him just at the end of February for our Black History Month. Tim DeFore is the first man of color to hold that seat, so we're so very proud of him. And this is the first time we have had a Republican treasurer and auditor general since 1956. So that's a long time ago. So actually, Tim and I met last week, and we were talking about transparency. And looking at ways, how can we be more transparent? Because we both believe that taxpayers should be able to see how every single one of their dollars is being spent. So we have met on that, and I'm sure that we'll have more opportunities to collaborate. Actually, I'm located in the finance building, and I should have mentioned, I've been spending about, except for this week, I've spent 3 to 4 days a week in the office in Harrisburg. And that's just because I'm new, I don't know my way around Harrisburg politics, that I need to be there, develop relationships with the legislature. And also when we have essential workers there that have worked all through the pandemic, like the IT folks and the mail folks, that it's important for me to show up. So Tim works up on the second floor, almost right above my office. And so we will have opportunity to collaborate and work together for sure.
Well, I think that's excellent. And I think it's great you have Charles Ogby working with you.
Thank you.
And I would also point out that Otto Voigt, who was once our Republican candidate who was not successful, has a lot of ideas that maybe you would find interesting also.
I agree. And I had reached out a couple of times during the campaign to Otto, and we never were able to, I don't think he was available, but he reached out to me just recently and said he would be happy to have a phone call and, offer any suggestions that I think he had a lot of ideas. You're right.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Todd Kowalski. Todd, you had a few questions. Like to pick one from your group and we can get started. You're on mute. Favorite phrase of Zoom, you're on mute.
Yeah, you'd prefer I was stayed on mute, but Treasurer, congratulations. Usually in a position with a new elected official, they come in, they kind of clean house and bring in their own folks, and sometimes they clean house with gusto. But and in full disclosure, I'm very good friends with Hugh Allen. I don't think there's a bigger fan of Hugh Allen than me. I think keeping him on was a great idea. I guess, can you speak a little bit to your hiring practices and what you're doing a little bit differently, and maybe how that's reflects your outlook on what you're looking to accomplish over the next few years?
I can. So in business and in the military, I have always wanted to make sure I surrounded myself with the very best folks. I understand that the last time we had a Republican treasurer, they really cleaned house with gusto, as you would say, Todd. And so I recognize that people were a little bit nervous about that. So I'll tell you what, one of the first things I did was I met with Kelly Fennessy, who was a legislative director and had worked, over 15 years for the Republican Senate side and then had come over to Treasury. Tremendous amount of institutional knowledge. So the very first thing I did was say, Kelly, would you stay? And she said, you want me to stay? And I said, I absolutely do. And so I think that word probably spread. I knew, we absolutely needed somebody in policy that was more ideologically represented to where I fall, and also needed somebody different in communications. So we started there. The rest of those senior staff positions, they are highly technical positions. These folks have been there for years and years and years. I would be crazy to get rid of the lady who is wonderful. She's the cash wizard who runs our Bureau of Cash Management Bureau, and she's fantastic. And so I would never be able to find anybody better to replace her. I'll tell you somebody else who I kept, who I took a little heartburn, was the Chief of Legal Counsel, Christopher Craig. And he's brilliant. He's brilliant on these pension boards that need to be cleaned up. He helped the legislators push a lot of legislation. He is absolutely loyal. And I'm very happy that I kept him. Yes, Hugh Allen, who was the previous chief of staff, not for the entire term, but I think for about 2.5 years. After my very first conversation with Hugh Allen, I could see that, and watching him interact with the staff, I knew that I wanted him to stay for as long as he would stay as chief of staff. I had to twist his arm a little bit. But after we hired Eric and Charles, he said, okay, I think this could work. And I couldn't be happier with the staff that I had. I will step back to my swearing in ceremony. So I don't know if anybody watched it, but I did have Joe Torsella, the previous treasurer. I'd had him speak at it. I asked him way back in November. So about 2 days after he conceded, I called him and I said, Joe, I'd like you to speak at my swearing in ceremony. And he said, well, we don't do that in Harrisburg. And I said, well, I really want to do it more like a change of command ceremony. And that's when the outgoing commander gets to speak a few minutes and thank his staff and talk about what he's most proud of. And he said, well, you might change your mind. And I said, Joe, I know you don't know me very well, but I will not be changing my mind. So a couple weeks later, he said, okay, I like the idea. I'll do it in person if I'm able to get vaccinated. Otherwise, do you mind if we do a Zoom or a video? And I said, no, of course not, whatever makes you more comfortable. So he did participate in it. And I thought it spoke volumes for him. He was very gracious. All of my relatives were very impressed. So, and that's kind of how I started out the whole transition.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that answer and the insights. Joe actually spoke to our board, met with our board back in 2019. So hopefully that's not an ominous sign for you. And we have our next question is from Steve Achel. Steve, as you may recall, had served as general counsel and then chief of staff to Governor Tom Corbett. He's a member of our board of directors as well. And then I'll leave it to the two of you to decide whether his military service in the Navy counts as real military service. You offline. But Steve, you're up.
Thanks for that. I won't get into whether the Navy or which service is better. We both served. First of all, thanks for running, and thanks for doing what you're doing. Government service is a bear, and running is a bear, and you've obviously been very accomplished at it. I want to follow up on Senator Baker's commendation of your bringing Charles Zogby, and I had a chance to work with him on a day-to-day basis, and was very, very impressed with his work ethic and his knowledge and his everything about him. So congratulations on that. But more so, your willingness to retain Christopher Craig, and with Zogby, you have probably 3/4 of all the knowledge of pension funds in the Commonwealth now on your staff. And to the extent you haven't had a chance to sit down and get comfortable with pension funds, I think Joe Torsella added materially to that board, the pension board, state pension board, and the overall effort. And I guess what the question is, have you had a chance yet to get immersed in the pension issues? And if so, what do you think are your biggest issues? How are you going, how are you going to address that?
Okay, that is a great question, Steve, and thank you for your service. And I forgive you for being in the Navy, but I'm just kidding because both of my parents were in the Navy Reserve, and your name came up today. I had a meeting with Roger Richards, so I'm in Erie right now.
Oh, okay.
And yes, so he's on my transition team, so he brought your name up. So that's so funny that
Tell
now
him
I get to meet you.
and everybody said hi.
I will actually, I'm in his office doing this call.
I love it.
Yes. So pension, oh my gosh, PSERS, where to even start? So of course there's SERS and there's PSERS. SERS seems to be a little bit more transparent. They're live streaming their board meetings on a better track. So the first thing I did was I had to have 9 hours of PSERS training. So we did that so that we could make sure that I could jump right into the pension board. So I was lucky enough to have to participate in the first PSERS pension board, which was last Thursday and Friday. And I have to tell you, so the first day, Thursday, I was in the office and actually Christopher came in, Christopher Craig, to help me through it. And that was about, gosh, 9 hours. The second day, we were almost meeting for 12 hours. I mean, we didn't finish up till 6:45 at night, and they waited till kind of the end to do their votes. So I felt like I was filibustered for 2 days. But I will tell you something interesting. So the governor had an open appointment for 2 years on the PSERS board. And so we were in a senior staff call, and I thought I had this brilliant idea. I said, hey, I should call the governor and ask him to appoint Joe Torsella to that vacant seat, because I knew, we vote the same way. And so I promptly got a text from Hugh Allen and said, great idea, but the governor has already asked him. So I said, oh, okay, that's okay. So I started texting Joe Torsella and I said, you have to do this. This would be fantastic. Please join this board, because he has, he worked so hard on it for 4 years. So at any rate, he has agreed to fill that vacant seat. So that is going to be very helpful. If you look at the performance for the PSERS boards, if you look at the 1, 3, 5, and 10-year performances, they are in like they're 94%. So they're in the very, very, very bottom. Okay. So the issue is the hedge funds, just they're picking things that underperform. So I'm just going to take up more of that mantle to stop investing in these highly unliquid funds. And I'm going to push for more transparency. We should be live streaming the meetings. We should be putting the travel out there. A lot of these funds will pay some of the staff to go to places like Scotland and UK and all over the place. So we're going to push that out there as well. And I'll also say that Representative Frank Ryan, he is in charge of the audit committee, and he's a huge advocate on PSERS. So I hope that answers your question, Steve. We're working on transparency. We're working on changing the investment strategy, but it's tough because there's 13 board members. So I only have the one vote, but with Joe Torsella coming on, that'll be fantastic.
Thank you. That was something that when he helped with us, we discussed at some length.
Okay.
Tom Chimento. Tom has joined us. Tom chairs our board of directors. He's with American Water. Tom, I believe you had a question and comment.
Yeah, good morning or good afternoon, Treasurer. Thanks for joining. I apologize for being late. And so I did miss the first few minutes, but I checked with Guy to make sure I could, ask this question, and just kind of, I guess, I've read through, your campaign materials. I remember watching your campaign, but, what do you hope to accomplish and as treasurer, and what's your goal? Where do you see the office being 4 years from now?
Okay, so 4 years from now, I hope that we have a Keystone Saves program. I hope that we have open checkbooks so that everybody can see how every single dollar is being spent. I think that we're going to have a huge rural outreach so that we make sure we don't leave these rural counties behind. We're going to be giving out tons of unclaimed property because there's 3.8 billion with a B in the Commonwealth. And, you know, it's not our money, it's your money. Okay. We're going to, we're setting up a program called Treasury Modernization. So with the opportunity to telework and really make sure that we're set up with best practices to really lead the way, our agency. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, but basically I'm going to be an advocate for every single Pennsylvania. My real passion is jobs in the US industrial base, you know, from my private sector. And so anything that I can do, you know, and sometimes it's not exactly in the treasurer's realm, but I have the bully pulpit and there's other things I can do. And also I do want to be a check and balance on the governor.
Excellent. Great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Could you talk about the extent to which your team has an ability to oversee how tax revenue is coming in? In other words, in terms of budgeting and finance, the money that you have to invest, do you have the ability to have a snapshot of how things are doing? Has the pandemic hurt us, or, you know, revenue collections down, that sort of insights? Would that be something you could share?
We do. So with our cash management and our comptroller, Ed Palmer, so basically Ed Palmer and Tammy Bianchi, they have a system, it's PeopleSoft, and I haven't gotten so much into all those details, but basically they are able to project where we're going to be at different points of time. And they are so good that their projections are always spot on. They're always better than the governor's office. And so we will look, making sure that we have enough money in the general fund, making sure that we have enough liquidity. And we also have something called the STIP, which is basically a short-term loan. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but so if different agencies, like if the government has a budget shortfall, which obviously we do, they can borrow money from the STIP and then repay it. So it's kind of you know, like loaning money to yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate it, because I think one of the, it sort of ties in with your ideas and your leadership you're showing on transparency. But I think there's going to be a lot of real discussion throughout this year, probably even to next year, into, you know, what the status is of tax collections, where it's coming from, has the economy hurt certain sectors or not, and sort of matching that up against the truckloads of money being sent in from Washington and where it's all going. There's going to be a lot of activity, income and outgoing, and I think your office's ability to help us navigate that, see that would be very helpful.
Yes, and actually during our transition team meeting, Ed Palmer got on and showed exactly where we were at with the federal money that had come in, with the revenues and with the shortfall. It was really interesting. I think that's out in our transparency portal, but if not, I'll make sure that we get it out there, because it is a very nice snapshot of what's coming in, what's going out, and where the funds came from, because I want to see how much is the federal government bailout versus our revenues coming in. So I agree.
Thank you. There's another question from Tim Hennessy. Tim, I'm going to turn the floor over to you so you can pose your question. Thanks for being with us, Tim.
You're welcome. Thank you, Treasurer, for joining us today. I just asked, you had just mentioned live streaming your meetings, and many younger people use social media exclusively for their news and or government updates. I saw that Treasurer Torsella had shut down the Pennsylvania Treasury Twitter site back in December. I just wanted to know if you had any plans to utilize that or any other social media in a meaningful way.
We do. So, and thank you, Tim, for that question. So yes, we're very active on social media. If you've gone to check it out, but we're very active in Facebook. We're active in we have a Twitter account now. Treasurer, it was Hugh Allen actually that they decided to shut down Joe Torsella's Twitter account, because what he was tweeting about were issues that really didn't have anything to do with Treasury. A lot of green stuff. He had, 400,000 followers that I can guarantee you would not want to have followed me. AOC and folks like that. So we had to shut that one down, but we did start up a new one. And what we're trying to do is put out a lot of things about unclaimed property in different counties and make it interesting. So like on Groundhog Day, we put out a press release and we talked about all the unclaimed property for the folks in Punxsutawney. So, while Phil was looking at a shadow, we were trying to give out unclaimed property back to the folks in Punxsutawney. We're doing things like really trying to highlight the unemployment compensation fraud. Okay, so we're putting a lot out about that, and there's there's like links on our website. We're improving that. And oh gosh, what else are we really focusing on? Well, like I mentioned, I don't know if you heard this, but just the rental and utility assistance. So making sure that folks understand that if they were impacted, through no fault of their own through this pandemic, that there's help they can get to help pay their rent, help pay their utilities. And then CHIRP, if they were unfortunately in the hospitality business, so that can be restaurants, hotels, bars that serve food, and they have less than 300 employees, that you can get a grant from $5,000 to $50,000. So we've really been trying to push the word out with things that are more relative to helping Pennsylvanians in the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. There's a note in the chat box, the treasurer
From
staff.
Sam.
Yeah, hello, Sam. So please make sure to follow on social media. And we wouldn't be a good chamber if we weren't encouraging everyone to follow the elected officials on social media and follow the chamber as well. I just wanted to, as we begin to wind down, because we want to be respectful of your time, I wanted to urge you and your team to think about not only our chamber, but I'm sure you came across, but the literally hundreds of chambers. And we interact through our trade association, because we wouldn't be Pennsylvania if we didn't have a trade association for everything. But we operate and interact as a trade association. We in particular have a good relationship with Gene Barr at the state chamber. But to use us as a resource on many of your initiatives, I think from on transparency, we can help promote that in terms of making sure the public's aware, in terms of trying to work on savings. Again, most of our chambers across the state provide both digital as well as live presentations, offering professional business advice to folks and individuals. We also have one when life goes back to normal. We do a year-long program for high school students. We would love to incorporate the idea of savings and money management into that. So just as a general reminder to use us as a network of hundreds of organizations that touch thousands of businesses and millions of people, to try and share information, particularly for the things that you do that really tie in nicely to Chamber's missions.
Thank you, Guy, and we will take you up on that. Absolutely. I appreciate that very much.
Are there any final comments or questions you wanted to share with us before we wrap up? Before we're done, I'm going to turn it back to our board chair, Tom Chimento. But any final comments or questions or topics we didn't discuss you'd like to share with the group?
Well, I just want to thank all of you for what you do for Chester County. It'll be great. I think we're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, kind of, maybe almost partially through the tunnel, and it's going to be great. We really need to do whatever we can to support our businesses opening up, because that's how we're going to get revenue into our state. And I'm also going to be, I should say, I really want to promote policies where we can attract younger people back to Pennsylvania.
We very much thank you for your comments today and being with us. We very much look forward to having you with us, hopefully later this spring or summer.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to turn it over to our chair, Tom Chimento, who chairs our board of directors. He's with American Water. Tom?
Good. Hey, thank you again. And thank you, Guy. And I think, we all want to continue to follow you on social media, but we're also going to ask everybody to remember to follow the chamber. We've got a lot of, even with the lockdowns, we've got a lot of great events happening. As you can see, we did this today virtually, and we hope to have in-person events over the summer. So, keep following what we're doing and look to participate. And again, Treasurer, thank you so much for your time and your commitment and your public service, your continued public service. And we look forward to working with you and advocating with you. That's something this chamber is not afraid to do, and we've done it. So appreciate you being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. And I was honored to be here and meet all of you via virtual. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Very much.